going live tonight with my new Fire tablet, Fire HD 10 tablet. First time I'm doing this. Unfortunately, they don't have any, the App Store for Amazon. It doesn't have any official YouTube app to it yet, which, I wish it did, but, it doesn't. So hopefully you guys can hear me too. The volume says it's a little low, but hopefully you guys can hear me. But yeah, basically, like I said, YouTube doesn't have no official app when it comes to Amazon, if you will, which I wish they did, but what are you going to do? Uh, but I wanted to come on here mainly because, as you see in the title, basically, this is basically like a part two, if you will. It's a part two. And first of all, before we start, do me a solid favor, guys, and like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, also share the video, and also support me at all of the outlets in the description outside of YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated, especially at the new Fourth Wall store and the OG Teespring store, as well as check me out at Patreon to help me out there as well. And also, Super Chats are on, guys. If you want to donate there, any amount at this time would be great. So, yeah, just throwing that out there. Maybe I'm going to start doing that instead of, maybe I'll start advertising, where you can find me, before I start the video instead of afterwards. Maybe that'll help out a lot more. But anyway, again, hold on. Let me check if you can hear me. Let me make sure you can hear me. Hold on. I want to check something. Hold on for a sec. I'm gonna have to go over to search to get myself put up here. Here we go. Let me check. Well, you can hear the ad in the background. I don't know if you can hear the ad in the background, but it's in the background.
If you're going to open a savings account, don't you think the return should be?
Yeah. 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 Okay, so obviously you can hear me. Okay, so obviously you can hear me. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you heard anything in the background there. But yeah, once again, guys, like I said, do me a solid favor and ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video, like the video, and also support me in the places outside of YouTube, like my Teespring store, which you can find the link at the bottom of the description, as well as the new Fourth Wall store, which you can find the link at the top. And also support me over at Patreon as well as at Venmo and Cash App, as well as support me over here support me here with this live stream. Super Chats, like I said, are open, and Super Thanks will be open afterwards. Any amount would be greatly appreciated, guys. But anyway, and like I said, I might start to do a lot of my live streams and regular videos like this as well. Basically, with an introduction of how so you can find me and how you can support me. But yeah, once again, like I said, this is kind of like a part two, if you will. But it seems that once again, my now former employer has proven me and a lot of other people that feel the same way about them and anybody else in that category right. They've proven us right. Mainly, long story short, from what I heard, some people, some individuals that came before me, basically was let go as well. They were let go as well. We don't know what the reason was, and I'm certain there are some that were brought in with me that are probably being let go as we speak, or were let go recently as well. But again, can't say. And you might ask yourself, well, how do you know this? How do you know they were let go? Well, I was looking around online, and I heard some rumblings, if you will, from certain community pages for the city where the job's at, right? And some of these said basically, from individuals that they were let go by this place, and they don't understand why. Um, Some have said that from what they heard, but from them being let go as well, it's mainly because of the fact of, you didn't, you weren't up to par, if you will. You weren't up to par to what they wanted, in as far as performance and maybe even quote unquote safety. Um, but to me, it's like, once again, it just proves they weren't ready. They weren't ready to, basically be part of this holiday season like they normally are. And as I mentioned and alluded to in the last video with the same title here, basically you can blame, tariffs all you want. You can blame who's in charge all you want for those tariffs and all that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because basically at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's in charge of the country, if you will. If they decide they're going to find a way, tariff or not, to financially get this country back on track, they're going to find it. And if it's going to be at the expense of a lot of companies like retailers and everything, and their warehouses by association, then they're going to do it. They're going to do it whether it's at the cost of those retailers in the warehouses or not. They're going to do it. And mainly what that means is, I drink some Starbucks here for a second. And mainly what that means essentially is, if you hear rumbling, that something's going to happen, again, no matter who's in charge of the country, when you hear that rumblings, you hear rumblings of what's going to happen, going to occur, that are going to occur in the near future, then you need to basically be prepared. You need to have a plan. You need to make sure that, from a hiring perspective, if you will, from a hiring perspective, that you basically make sure that you set yourself a limit, as to how many people you're going to hire within a certain time frame. And once you do that, you should be okay to go in the near future. You should be okay to go for that season. But they didn't do that, and I'm sure they're not alone in this. I'm sure there's a lot of distributing centers, warehouses, retailers, and all that are pretty much doing the same thing, and some are not. Some are actually doing it right. Some are looking at the fact that they do need help, and they're going to call upon people to be hired on seasonally or permanently, because they realize, hey, without this help, we're not going to get through this holiday season, or we're not going to get through the next year. So it's just one of those things to where they're basically learning a major lesson, and that major lesson is basically always be prepared, always be ready for that upcoming holiday season, as well as basically basically place on yourself a limit. And I do apologize for that notification there, but place yourself a limit, if you will, as to basically how many people you're going to hire on for that season, how many people you're going to bring on for that season. You need to limit yourself. You need to limit yourself, so that way, once you do that, you can organizally see what areas need to be, you need to place these people in, so that way, you'll have enough people in that area, and if you need to hire a little bit more on, you'll be able to do that without issue. Without issue. But again, this former place of employment and others like them, I can guarantee you there's more out there that are the same way, were not physically and mentally, if not properly prepared. They weren't. They weren't prepared, and what it does is it drives people, to not, those you hired on, as I mentioned before, it drives them to not, learn any better at what you want them to do, at the task you're assigning them to do. For again, when I look at the fact that this week would have basically, for me, if I was still working, I mean, right now, I mean, what time is it? It's about 4 o'clock. I'd just be settling down right now. I'd be just settling down, sitting back like this, putting my wearing my headset here, right here, putting my headset on, maybe, and I would be relaxing. I would be, relaxing. Maybe I'd be watching the new movie I just got today as well, and I'm gonna have to put that on digital real soon. But still, I'd be relaxing. I'd be laying down. I'd be putting my feet up, relaxing, maybe drinking some coffee like I'm doing now, excuse me, and just relaxing and mentally, letting my body heal, and rest up for the next day, which is Friday. I would be doing that right about now. But, that's not the case. That's not the case anymore, or at least for the time being. But the point I'm getting at is that this week's schedule, as I've alluded to before, was only a 3 day week. I mean, yesterday would have been my first day back at work. Today would have been the second, and tomorrow would have been basically the end of the week. And if you're anybody that's there currently, or any job like it currently, with that kind of atmosphere, that kind of structure, you have to be asking yourself, why did I even sign on for this? Why did I even apply for this? Because if you're not going to get the hours that they promised you were going to get, then what's the point? What's the meaning? Of even applying if you're not going to get it. I mean, it's understandable if things are slow and all that. All right, it's understandable if things are slow. That's one thing. But when it comes to distributing centers and warehouses, there's always work to be done. There's always work that needs to be handled, needs to be looked at. Needs to be taken care of. And you shouldn't have to look at one department being down and slow to say, oh, let's offer voluntary time off, or hey, let's make sure the LTEs and the seasonals don't have to come to work for the next few days. And again, as I said before, yeah, people will be appreciative of that. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, even though they appreciate it and they can spend more time with their families, what does that do for them in the long run when it comes to learning the new skill you have them assigned to? It doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do them any favors, mainly due to the fact that they have they have nothing to work on, or they have no opportunity, I should say, to be able to work on those skills. They don't, and it's just hard and it's just hard for them at the end of the day to really apply themselves to the craft you have them you want them to apply to and get better at. It hurts them because you're not giving them that time. Again, like I said, yeah, people will be appreciative of having extra time off to catch up on things, spend time with their families, and all that. That's great. But, but when it comes to the holiday season, that shouldn't be a real factor. What you should do is say, hey, let's find some other places around here to get them to work, or at least say, hey, you're going to be coming in Monday through Friday, but on these certain days, you're only going to do 4 hours or 4.5 hours, and that's it. At least let them do that, and it helps them even in that short time frame to be able to get better at what you're assigning them to do. But again, they didn't do that. They didn't allow that to happen. And that's what hurt people like me and maybe even those that I've worked with. And like I said before, there's a guy that lives in Gustine, not about a few miles up from where I live, and he has to drive. He has to drive. I don't know if he still does. Every 20 plus miles, 25, 30 miles. You know, to the town, which is 16 miles away from here, to the warehouse to work there. And he's an LTE, he's seasonal, and you got to be wondering what's going through his mind. You got to be wondering if he's thinking, why did I even sign up for this? Why did I even apply for this? If yes, I'm getting some days off to spend with my family, but why did I even, sign up for this if I'm not going to financially make some, make some, monetization structure? What was the point? Because he's not getting the opportunity to apply what his experience in other places that as warehouse like and such. He's not getting his opportunity to apply that here and learn how things are similar, if not different. He's not getting that opportunity, and it's not just hurting him; it's hurting them because now they're basically forced to have to either let people go, due to the fact that they overstaffed, or they have to let people go because people are not performing the way they want them to because they haven't been given an opportunity to really get good. I'm not saying that if I would have remained on that I would have been any better than what I was at building walls, but I probably would have had a significant improvement. And I felt like I was improving. I did. But I guarantee you, if I would have had a little bit more time, there would be more of a significant improvement to where maybe I wouldn't have been let go. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And honestly, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, at the end of the day, distributing and warehousing places like this have no one but themselves to blame. Of all, I mean, out of all areas to hire people in regular, for a regular permanent position or seasonally, out of all, work environments, you would think warehouses, distributing centers would not be the kind that would give extra days off because things are slow, would not be the kind to always, more so at the beginning of the season, give voluntary time off. You think they'd basically be the ones with the better structure to be like, hey, we're not going to, we're not going to let, the slowdown hurt us. We're not going to have it, cause us to, put people, out, for extra couple of days, give them days off and all that, do VTO. We're going to find ways to make sure they have something to do, even if it's for 4 to 6 hours, because 4 to 6 hours is better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But but again, that didn't happen. And you would think out of all places, a warehouse or distributing center would do that. But but they didn't. And again, once again, it's proving, what I've said before, correct. They were not properly ready or prepared. They weren't properly ready or prepared for this, for this holiday season. And because they weren't, they're now paying a price. They are now paying a huge price. And it's just bad. It's just a bad look for any distributing center warehouse, out there. No matter what company they're attached to, it's a bad look for them, and by extension, it's a bad look for the company. You can't tell me that the regional people, if not the people above them, are not looking down upon this and going like, man, this is not a good look for us. We need to fix this. And I guarantee you, as I said before in the audio video that I did, the first one with the same title, the vlog. I said there that had the regional managers or anybody known that basically the tariffs were going to happen based on the reports they were getting, that they would have had a meeting. They would have had a meeting via Zoom or whatever, and basically said, okay, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do, and go from there. Make sure they have, the blueprints for what they got to do. Make sure they have the time limit of how many people they got to hire within a month or so, whatever. Then cut off the hiring from there, and then just focus on executing the plan to make sure things go off without a hitch. But they didn't do that because again they weren't properly prepared. They probably didn't think, and I say it with all due respect, no offense, they probably didn't think tariffs were going to be an issue in the way that they were. But they, again, as I've said before, whether you agree with it or not, these tariffs are actually going to benefit us. And again, like I said, it wouldn't have mattered who was in charge of the country anyway. If they would have gone the tariff route or something similar, whatever route that person would have gone in, it was to benefit getting money back into the pockets of people like us here in America. But the thing is, again, no matter what the situation would have been, every company, company out there, retailer, grocery, warehouse, that's connected to them, every company needs to be properly ready and prepared for this kind of a change. You need to have a plan, but they didn't have a plan, and that's what hurt them. That's what's hurting them. Hopefully by the end of this season, they'll come to realize that, hey, if we bring some of the people back, we let go because of either poor performance, safety, or whatever, or the fact that they just overstaffed and they had nothing else for them to do. You know, Hopefully by the end of the season, they'll realize, hey, next year we know the tariffs are going to continue. Let's make sure we have a proper plan. Let's make sure we are properly prepared for what's going to be coming our way. Because if they don't have a proper plan, if they don't have, a means of making sure they, have, a limit of how many people they're going to hire during a certain a certain seasonal portion of the year, then again, they're going to face the same kind of situation. They're going to face the same kind of situation, and it's going to hurt them in the long run. And you don't, and if you are them, you don't want that. You don't want that whatsoever. I wouldn't want it. That's for certain. I wouldn't want it, and I know they don't want it. But because they were not ready, they're now paying a price. And because they gave people more time off than they needed, even though, again, like I said, people probably appreciate it. Financially, it's not, putting money in the wallet or the purse or the pocket, and also from a experienced training perspective, it's not getting them any better at the position you have them in, because basically, what it does is it basically, causes them not to improve any better than what you want them to improve at. And also it basically discourages them, like I mentioned earlier, as to and makes them want to ask the question of, why did I even sign up here? Why do I even want to be here if they're not going to have me here Monday through Friday, it or Sunday through Saturday? It doesn't make any sense to them. It doesn't add up. So hopefully at the end of the season they will learn, and I guarantee you too, those that may have had it out for some people, like I alluded to before, this first shift manager obviously seemed to have it out for me and some other people. I guarantee you, the people I've talked to, one of the people that helped me get to work at times, they said when they have a gut feeling about something, they're usually on the money, and when they sit and basically their gut feeling is this individual is going to get talked to by the higher up, and when they get talked to, it's not going to be good. Not saying they're going to lose their job. God forbid they do, but God forbid that happens. I don't want them to lose their job. I don't. But basically, they're probably going to be put in a position where either they're on probation or they're demoted back to supervisor or even associate, so they can learn the lesson of, oh, I'm not supposed to be, overpowering. I'm not supposed to act very authoritarian, if you will. I'm supposed to basically be respectful. I'm supposed to work with the person and help them out, and not target or make them feel like they're being targeted, if you know what I mean. So hopefully when that moment happens, whatever the outcome is, and I'm not wishing for him to lose his job, God forbid that, but hopefully it'll be a lesson they'll learn, to where, let's say if someone like me, goes back there, which I may not, I don't know, depending on the next few days and months, because I know God's got me set up somewhere, and I'm going to be hoping for that very soon. Pray that something comes very soon. Um, but basically, let's say for argument's sake, I somehow end up there again. Hopefully he'll look someone like me in the eye and maybe humble himself and be like, look, I'm sorry I got on you too much, or I got on you so much last year. We just, maybe he'll admit that they just weren't ready and he just didn't know how to handle it. But now he will. Now he'll understand that the only way you can help people get better at the job is to help them in the long run. And I'm not saying he didn't help me, but basically you need to make sure you have somebody with that individual at all times until they are properly, and I mean properly, ready to go. If not, look at where their strengths are in other areas and say, hey, you're better off here than here, and I'd rather have you there so you don't chance being let go. To me that would be the better solution overall. But again, as I said before in the original video, and I'm saying here in the title of this live stream follow up, he, along with this place, this warehouse, distributing center, and I'm sure many others like them across the country, they just weren't ready. They weren't properly organized or prepared for this holiday season. They were not ready. And again, when you hear about something like tariffs happening, again, no matter who's running the country, when you hear about something, like tariffs or something similar to it about to occur, that's that's being done to properly. I almost had a brain fart there too. I do apologize, but properly to be able to put money back in your pockets, into your wallets, and all that. When you hear that that's going to happen, if you're an overall multi-million-dollar franchise that has warehouses all over the place, for your retail or grocery outputs, then you need to make sure that they are properly ready and prepared for for those upcoming changes with the tariffs, and the upcoming changes, or for whatever is similar to the tariffs. Again, no matter who's in charge of the country. But yeah, basically, in closing, guys, like I said before, they were just not properly ready. They were just not properly prepared, and now we're seeing the results. And I guarantee you, myself, people, and I do apologize for that notification, but I guarantee you that me and these other people are being let go or have been let go, along with other people across the country in distributing centers and warehouses. I guarantee you, that basically, what was I saying? Almost lost track because I got distracted by that notification. But like I said, basically, I guarantee you that basically these warehouses, distributing centers, are gonna basically look back at this year and they're gonna realize that they didn't plan out correctly, that they should have been prepared, you know, and by, like I said, letting go of people like myself and others out there, in a similar fashion or for whatever reason, you know, again, it's going to make them realize that, yeah, they should have been more properly prepared. They should have been more ready to go with whatever the holiday season, was going to bring and everything. They basically should have made sure they had a plan to execute from beginning to end, and obviously they didn't. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. But anyway, hopefully at the end of this year, like I said, by doing all this, but letting all this happen, they'll learn their lesson and they'll be ready and prepared for next year. But that's all I'm going to say, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching live. If you have, again, do me a favor, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, also share the video, and also click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube, as well as click on the top link to go to my fourth wall store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. I got one thing up there right now, but there will be more coming. I guarantee you that. As well as check out the Teespring store. The link is at the bottom of the description as well. Also, check me out at Patreon, guys, to help me out there, as well as Venmo and Cash App. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Let me know from your experience if you've ever dealt with something like this before or you're currently dealing with it. Let me know. Love to hear your thoughts. And do you agree that when it comes to these kind of things, no matter who's in charge of the country, that you need to be properly ready and prepared for the changes that will come with the tariffs or anything similar to it? That whoever's in charge of the country has planned to put money back into the wallets and pockets and purses of all of us Americans. But let me know what your thoughts are. And until then, I'm out.